I was saying we are live, and it
Okay.
looks peoply out there. Holy cow! Steve Nealon from Harneal Media, Frankie CNC Woodworking Channel, Patrick's Workshop. That guy's on YouTube.
Not only is he on YouTube, but now officially he's on Facebook too.
Oh no, no, no! You're kidding me, right?
No, it happened.
Okay, it's Facebook official.
Yeah.
JP Woodwork, Hobbies Woodshop. Evening, y'all. Thanks for coming and hanging out with us.
Welcome, guys.
So, I I was thinking of something earlier today, and it got me into wondering a couple of things. And you are a heck of a lot more savvy when it comes to this stuff, but I was wondering, do they even sell comic books anymore?
Of course they do, dude.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Well, see, you got further into comic books than I ever got. So I
Well,
figured I would ask you, you'd know more. I mean, I can remember getting one comic book series. I think we've talked about it before. My favorite magazine growing up was Mad Magazine.
yeah.
And the artist, Sergio Aragones, he used to draw little cartoons within the margins of the magazine.
Yeah.
Well, he did a comic book called Gru the Wanderer, and he was a kind of a Conan the Barbarian type of a character who had a dog who he just called Dog, but other people called the dog Mulch. So I guess the dog's name was Mulch, and he was always on a quest.
On a quest.
He was on a quest for cheese dip.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yes, that was his quest. And he would run into, villains and this, that, and the other, and he'd save the damsel and what have you. And there was a recurring character named the Old Sage. That's all you ever knew him by, was the Old Sage. And he would, offer advice and try to help him rescue the fair maiden and all the other good stuff, and find cheese dip, of course. But that's about as far as comic books as I ever got.
Yeah, I don't know what kids are. I don't even know. Look, to be honest with you, yeah, I collected. I don't know what's trendy and cool. I mean, I think that we've passed the Rubicon. We've crossed the Rubicon on that number, and I don't know what's cool and what's not. But I know that in the '80s, picking up from the '70s, there was a strong comic book sort of following and participate in the 70s, and it passed over to us in the 80s because the older brothers and sister, or older brothers in the case of us around here, they would collect the old X-Men and by the time we come around, it's like a new group of X-Men, and I'm like, hey dude, can you, like, one brother, so do you have X-Men so and so? He says, yeah, but I can't show it to you. It's in a packaged, wrapped,
Oh, yeah.
and it's got and you can't. But we'd go to his room. He'd open the closet door, and all his comic books would be there from back in the '70s, and he'd enjoy letting us watch them all together. But he would never
took them out of the package. Yeah.
Now, one time he did say okay, because he saw that I had interest and was collecting myself. But by this time, this guy was older than us by a bit, and he was like having girlfriends that would take him away, and they'd go off on dates, and we were still at that age where we're coming up and this and that, and that's sort of hasn't happened yet. Yeah. And so one time he said, okay, Eloy, and I'm gonna loan you, but you better not if I see them. And he actually he decided to give me Alpha Flight, which was a Canadian supergroup. And he said, here is the first 3 issues of Alpha Flight for you to read. And I'm like, what's Alpha Flight, man? And dude, that's a badass group of superheroes from Canada. I'm like, from Canada? You're young, you're a kid, you want American superheroes, and now this guy's saying, here, you can have and I said, okay, fine, and like begrudgingly went home and read it and totally got into Alpha Flight like you would not believe. I was so, you do with what you can.
Yeah, you do. Well, now I know people still collect them, But I mean, are there still new ones being published, or has because I don't know. I was wondering about this because I know I grew up reading magazines. I mean, and we're talking like, I was hot and heavy into cars. So we're talking like Popular Hot Rodding, Hot Rod Magazine, Rod and Custom, things like that. And plus Popular Mechanics, Popular Science, stuff like that. So I was wondering if anime had taken over for comic books.
Oh man, I wonder.
Because,
I don't know.
yeah, because I don't know if they even publish them anymore. I know there are still comic book stores out there where people are buying and selling, but is that older comics that they're trading, or is there new stuff still coming out?
No, I think there's new stuff. Well, I do know about 4 or 5 years ago, I
Mhm.
had a year there where I got back into, because they opened up a comic book store here, just like a block, literally across the block outside of Sweetwater, and it's
Mhm.
still there. The place is called Corca Comics. There's
Yeah,
a plug. They
yeah,
have two branches, as far as I know, here in Miami. But the cool thing is that I went in and I saw like there was this whole change up of the Marvel universe, where what they were doing is killing off all the characters,
wow.
and there would be no one left, and it would be that the Fantastic Four, if you remember,
Mhm.
what was the stretchy guy, Mr. Fantastic? Um,
I don't remember. Like I said, I never got real deep, but I know who they were.
Well, in a nutshell, what they did was, in order to create a new universe for like current age, like a
Mhm.
current time popularity and whatnot, they had to kill off all the mess that they had created in the past, because all these writers that they would bring in would write these stories, and the continuum
Mhm.
of the stories started to branch off into alternate universes and all sorts of crazy stuff. And so what they decided to do was to end the Marvel universe, kill everybody off.
Wow.
And they killed everybody off. But there was the resurgence, which was a like I guess like a 15 book series thing, where
Mhm.
they appear in this empty void of a universe, and Doctor Doom is controlling that and so basically they're trying to restart and then they came out with a whole new branch of comics for today's kids. I don't know that comic books are a profitable industry for comic book stores. I mean, they're still around, but I think that they're now shifted into role playing games and selling things
Yeah.
like bobbleheads, just plus the comic books.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't remember comic books being super, super popular when I was a kid, like 7, 8, 9 years old, when I would be interested in stuff like that. The characters were in cartoons on Saturday morning. I mean, that's where I first learned of the Fantastic Four, because I wasn't a comic book guy, but they had a Saturday morning cartoon.
Mhm.
So you had Fantastic Four, you had Captain America, you had Batman and Robin, of course. You had all kinds of Aquaman. You had all kinds of cartoons,
Yeah.
and so God, I forgot where I was going with that. But anyway, uh, but so killing off all those characters, I mean, I know they weren't super super huge because none of my friends read comic books either. But they did make a resurgence in the early and mid '80s.
Hmm.
They all of a sudden got real popular again.
It was a
And
big
that
deal.
lasted for a few years, and then it kind of died. And then back in the late '90s, early to mid, and then late '90s, they boomed again too. So I don't know, is it kind of a generational thing, or what is it?
Back in the 80s, if you remember, I think it's the same story with many of the things that we've mentioned as time progresses,
Mhm.
because in the 80s we had the beginning of computers, but they were like very basic, if you
Right.
recall the programs,
Oh
and it
boy.
was but so entertainment was all these other options, and we had the advent of popularity of of Dungeons and Dragons and role playing games, and
Right.
but comic books back in the 80s were um, pretty sweet, pretty awesome. But something happened towards the end of the 80s where you had people like Todd McFarlane and other famous like what do you call it, artists, drawers and whatnot.
Right.
um, they jumped ship, and so did a lot of the writers. They left
Okay.
Marvel and they formed their own comic book, um, I guess, association or whatnot. And it was Image comic books, and then other independents started popping out. And I
Okay.
think that that affected because the fan base were they, like I would love an if there were two types of drawings or various types, but there were two main, the more exaggerated Spider-Man, really etchy
Right.
sort of like drawing, line drawing, and the very basic olden days type comic book
Right.
drawing. And people were kind of leaning towards the new wacky, like the fingers were textured and
Yeah.
there was a lot of sort of like a lot of detail. And those people that added that detail in, they all booked, they took off
Right.
and started their, and so I think that that started some sort of a decline. And then in the 90s it started to waver and then it picked up again and whatnot. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's an up and down story with them. But now comic books I think are like 450 or who knows what
Yeah.
per thin little comic book.
Yeah. And I personally remember, oh God, less than a quarter. I remember them being like 15 and 20 cents. But of course, I'm old, so there you go. But the main thing, I guess, I don't know, because I've noticed print media has basically died for just about everything.
Yeah.
You know, I still find it hard to imagine that there's no such thing as a newspaper anymore. And because everybody got the newspaper. I
Mhm.
mean, the whole time you were growing up, did you ever buy a rubber band? No.
No. Well, yeah, well, my dad did office stuff, so he had those little packets of rubber bands,
Mhm.
but you could get them off of the newspapers.
Yeah, we got them off the newspaper, and I think just about everybody had one door in their house where the doorknob, the shank of the doorknob was just covered with rubber bands. As you peel the rubber band off the newspaper, throw it on that doorknob, and then you go into the living room with it, sit down and read. And that was how you knew what was coming up at the movies. Was the theater listings were in the back of the paper.
You're right.
That's how you knew what was on TV, because the TV listings, unless you bought TV Guide magazine,
Mm.
which is gone basically,
Yeah.
you know. And because most of the magazines that I grew up with are websites, but I don't know if they even publish anymore, because you know the the comic book shops that I went to in the early 80s, late 70s and early 80s, they started making that transition because they got into baseball cards as well.
Oh yeah.
And then Dungeons and Dragons came along and they started selling the games, and then they started selling the figurines and all the accessories for that. And comics started taking a back seat to that. And then they just added normal magazine racks. And I can remember, like, whenever mom needed to go grocery shopping, I would spend the entire time she was shopping up at the magazine rack, just going through the magazines. And it was right up front. It was a huge section of the grocery store, and there'd be 20, 30 people there.
There
You know,
used to be, now that you're saying that, honest to goodness, for those that listen to this in the year 2098 and beyond, there used to be a section of magazines at the grocery store.
and now, I mean, it's a little bitty thing if they still have one. I mean,
Oh,
they still have
along
the,
the aisle.
yeah,
Yeah. Or
they,
I'm sorry, on in the checkout
yeah,
thing.
they still have those, the tabloids up, the tabloid newspapers up front by the register, you know,
Right.
and
Yeah.
the headlines of those are hilarious. Anyway, they're, I've never bought one and taken it home, but I get a good chuckle out of the headlines. My wife ran off with Bigfoot. Oh, really? You're that bad to live with? You know, I had a UFO baby. Whatever.
Yeah.
And but the magazine rack, I mean, we got one Wally World here that has a magazine rack, and it's like, oh, maybe 10 feet long.
Yeah.
And, you had a book section, you had magazines. I mean, you had all the latest releases and here are the best sellers and this, that, and the other. And they had magazines divided up into all different interests and what have you. And I'm over here in the automotive just going absolutely nuts. And I really thought it was something special when I got a subscription to a magazine, because then it came to me every month before it hit the newsstand. And I really thought I was something. But yeah, man, I spent my life growing up on. Well, I grew up on it. Hot Rod and Rod and Custom and Mad Magazine, always my favorite.
It was a nice thing. Yeah,
And it
enjoyable.
it it just so that got me thinking about it, man. Print media completely and entirely is just dead. I mean, but it's kind of funny. People will, I mean, my grandkids will sit there and they'll tell me, well, well, nobody wants to read anymore. And I'm like, well, what do you do online? Oh
Yeah,
man, I go to this website. Yeah, and you read. So, yeah, you're playing games and yeah, you're watching videos, but you're still actively reading this stuff. It's just you know, we've traded the paper that you can feel in your hands for the tablet or what have you.
yeah.
So
There's a weird component to what we do now as opposed to what we used to do, and at least for me, I notice it. But and I don't know. I think that both have their advantages and disadvantages. But here's the thing: nowadays, you have to acquire some sort of knowledge, information.
mhm.
It's sure ready for you waiting out there on the internet, so you can type it up and stuff and look. But here's the problem: if you are looking for a topic and a solution to your query,
Mhm.
um, and you come across it, you find it, you read that paragraph, you caught the information, you're good, and you move along. Not necessarily, I'm talking in my case, and this is not all the time, but you find what you're looking for. Aha, right there, bam, I grabbed it. But there's more to read.
Yeah.
Um, so you're actually shortchanging yourself in a certain way because there's all this other information, but that's the benefit as well. Whereas back in the day, you had to go, as an example, to the library, pull that book, open it up, and begin your journey. And along the way, which you still do now, but you had to go through the pages. You could go through the index, but you still had to like sort of focus on that volume of information. Whereas today, it's more targeted and easy to grab, move along. So
Yeah.
I've pondered that before. There's kind of a little trade off there. Both have benefits and downsides to them.
Well, we know what websites to go to grab salient points.
Yeah.
And we'll go to two or three websites and we'll copy and paste parts and, throw them together or just read certain things and think, okay, now I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
When it used to be like to research for a paper or something like that in school, you would pick a subject, like I'm going to do a paper on the Highland clearances, for example. I would have to go to the library and I would have to search for books that dealt with it,
Mm-hmm.
check out 5 or 6 books, go home and read the ding dong things
Mm-hmm.
to be able to collate it all in my brain. There was no copy and paste. So, you're sitting there, in my case, I'm sitting there on my bed with 4 open books, going, well, this one says this, but this one says that. What's going on? Then pull out the third or fourth one. Oh, okay, here's what happened over here. These guys didn't say that, and to gather all your thoughts and get all your research done. Well, now we just copy and paste certain points and then fill in between, and you're done in an hour where it used to take a week or so.
Yeah. I
You
mean,
know,
and but now, so we also have the issue, or not the issue, but the advantage of that. I'll give you an example. I came across a document in PDF form from the 15 to 1600s. I don't,
Mhm.
and my last name is there.
Right?
It's a type of lawsuit that
Mhm.
occurred between people. It's all in Spanish.
Mhm.
I downloaded it. I opened it up because I'm looking for the research to find connections to my family tree and this and that, which
Right.
I'm all into as of late. Um, it's all in Spanish though,
Yeah.
but I can read each. And in this specific document, you can't grab a highlight
Right.
and paste and use translator. So I had to read each word in the old handwriting plus the
Ooh.
letter changes that they used to use. And it was like, I don't know how many pages, like 60 to 70 pages, but I was looking for the name, the person, and this and that. And so I had to go through and each word and try to figure out. I don't know exactly what's happening, but at one point, either that person with my surname or the person that whatever, that person either struck someone upside the head over money or he was struck upside the head over money. I don't know which of the two it was, but somebody did the striking. And so I have the thing saved for future reference. But my point is that now we have the advantage of other language documentation that you would never even come across. So there's a lot of beneficial sort of possibilities with what we have.
Right.
So, I mean, there is deep diving if you're so inclined.
And out of print books, because I mean, you and I and Steve and a few others were in a hangout that one evening when I came across a book that mentioned two of my ancestors.
That's right. I
And
remember
I
that.
found out a few things about them that I just flat out didn't know. And I was able to save a copy of those pages on my computer to go back and kind of do a little bit more research. So the research has become easier and it's become faster, but yet they're still printing books and you
Yeah.
can still go down to the library and check out the old, and not everything is scanned online yet,
Hmm.
but and there's a certain contingent out there, my wife being one of them. Her mother was a librarian. I tell people I read out of self-defense.
Right.
So, for instance, when we got married, we got transferred to Germany just a few months later.
Yeah.
We shipped one piece of furniture, our clothes, and 850 pounds of books
No way.
to
No
Germany.
way.
Yes, 850 pounds of books. And book readers will tell you that's not that many. Books are heavy.
That's pretty
But
okay. So that's an insane thing to say right there, but continue.
oh yeah, well, I'm serious. We've got more bookshelves in this house than we have places to sit down. But she's a serious reader. I'm
Oh,
serious
wow.
about this. But that contingent will tell you that reading something on a tablet is a pain in the butt. They
Hmm.
would like that tactile feel. They
Yeah.
like having that book and turning the page and deciding when they want to just put the bookmark in, close it up, set it down, get up, go do something, sit back down, pick it up, and read it. Reading for the pleasure of it and for the adventure that's in the story
I'm with you.
versus, watching a video, because that doesn't leave a lot to the imagination. You know, I'm kind of I'm dating both of us here when I talk about, to me, Harry Potter is still relatively new, even though the first book came out over 20 years ago. But there were a lot of people who read the books and then saw the movies and said that they were extremely disappointed, not because the story was changed or affected, but because they had imagined certain scenes the way the author had written about it.
Yeah.
And then to see it on the big screen, it was completely different than they had imagined it.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
there's that contingent too. But yeah, I do get a bit of nostalgia when it comes to magazines. I will pop by the magazine rack every once in a while to look for a magazine to see, are these guys still around? But I haven't bought a magazine in years.
well, let me tell you one thing that happened to me when I did have that resurgence of comic books, and I did collect a handful, but they were too expensive, man. And at the end of the day, I was like, no, what am I doing? Well, another thing that happened to me is that when I picked up that first comic book and I came home, back when I was a kid, what I would do was I didn't read comic books sitting up or sitting back on a chair, I would go to the bed and lay on my stomach, open up that comic book, and start that adventure. And it was awesome. Well, I tried that as an adult now. Number one, my belly doesn't make it so that I can comfortably do that. But apart from that, my eyes, I couldn't read the little bubbles that had the dialogue to save my life. I had to actually strain my. I was like, and I could barely, and it was like an uncomfortable. I said, "Well, boy, this doesn't feel as pleasurable as back when I was a kid."
Mhm.
And well, now I've got glasses, so this kind of has helped. And I could use more magnification. To be honest with you, I could use more magnification. But once I use these, Mark, I used to, without these glasses, I used to be able to read the screen. Now that I've been using these, I can't read the screen.
Yeah, because your eyes don't focus fast enough. That's called presbyopia. If you're over 35, you have presbyopia. And all that means is your eye's ability to focus, to shift from something up close to something far away,
It's screwed.
it slows down. And it takes longer for your eyes to focus if you shift from looking at something close up to something far away. It takes just a bit longer.
I can't even read the letters, and I don't know if you take off your glasses, can you even read? I can read it, but they're all blurred.
I can read our names down underneath I can read new and improved, and I can read, go back over here, Eloy. People would just freak if my finger showed up in front of your face right now.
But can you read the text on the side, the actual thing?
No, I can't read the comics. The comments, no. I can read the little powered by StreamYard up here, but and I can, now that my eyes have kind of started to adjust to the tube a little bit, I can read the names over in the chat.
Yeah, but blurry.
I can't read what they're saying.
But blurry, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're on the same footing here. Well, ever since I started wearing these glasses, I could see better, but when I take them off, I can't see jack squat.
Yeah.
And before I could, but I was straining all the time. I don't know what the heck's going on.
You're getting older, man. That's all there is to it. It's part of getting older. It's going to be, and I can see, it's fun.
It's funny.
It's funny you bring this up because I can remember the first time in a restaurant, I was struggling to read a menu. And it just happened to be, we were all up in Reno one day. My parents were on one side of the table. Linda and I were on the other side of the table, and I'm struggling to read a menu. And I asked her, "Can I borrow your glasses?" And she said, "Sure." So Linda handed me her glasses. She's worn glasses to read for quite a while. And I put them on, and I said, "Oh, okay, fine." My mother leaned over the table and said, "How long have you been wearing glasses to read?" And I said, "Oh, for about the last 45 seconds." And she, are you really having problems? You better get into the eye doctor. My mother was that way. But yeah, it's cheap readers. That's all I need. But
man,
it was weird. She just leaned forward. She had to get in there. "How long have you been wearing glasses to read?"
Man,
call me, just get them.
Billy says that he can read it all without glasses. Well, heck, Billy.
I can't read any of it. I
can't
read any of it. But
no.
It does get progressively worse as you get older.
Jeez, Louise. Well, go ahead. What?
But so just know that. Just, be ready for it. I used to be able to go down and buy the cheap readers, the 1x magnification. Then at one point, then it went to 1.25. Now I'm at 2.25 now. So,
I think this is either 150 or 175. I'm not sure. I don't remember.
Yeah.
Which is, it is what my old man wore glasses. He had the bifocal thing going on. I think I need both, to be honest with you.
Real quick glasses story in my father. My father had astigmatism and wore glasses from the age of 8. He always wore glasses. So we were stationed in Hawaii. They came over to visit us, and we flew over to Maui. And we were down in Lahaina, one of the big city on the island of Maui. And there was this big stone breakwater that went out into the ocean that kind of protected the harbor a little bit. So, and these are huge, huge rocks and all piled up one on top of the other. And you could, walk on out to the end of the breakwater just fine. You just would have to, there were big gaps between the rocks and you'd have to just remember to step over them. So Dad says, "You want to go out to the end of the breakwater?" I said, "Sure. Okay, fine. Great." And so I started trucking along out there, and I'm talking to him the whole way, and I get about 3/4 of the way to the end. And I asked him something and he didn't answer. And I stopped and I turned around and he was like 15 feet past the start of the breakwater.
Right.
And I thought, well, something's going on. So I turned around and I headed back and I'm watching him as I'm approaching him and he's doing this. And then he'd take a step and then get on the next rock and get up to the next gap and he'd do this. And I got back up to him. I says, "What's going on?" He says, "I forgot. I just bought brand new trifocals.
Holy smokes.
Don't ever try." He says, "So my depth perception ain't very good right now. Don't ever try to walk on something like this with brand new trifocals on." I says, "Well, you want to just go back?" And he says, "Yeah." So turned around and off we went,
Oh, man.
He couldn't see nothing. He was trying to adjust his head to get the right lens, and then he could take a step forward.
Jeez, please. Well, it brings up, since we're talking about that, I'm going to do a quick search because we do have the advantage of the internet. And
see, you should be doing that in a book or a magazine.
Well, forget that. Let's see when.
But he ended up getting laser cataract surgery done a few years later, and the eye doctor had him in. He says, "While I'm here, I can fix that stigmatism and it won't cost you any more. It just take a couple of extra minutes." And Dad was like, "Well, if it's free, sure." So they did. They fixed his astigmatism right there.
How?
With the laser. I don't know. I'm not an eye doctor, believe me. So about a month afterwards, I called him on the phone. I asked him about it. I said, "So how does it feel not to have to wear glasses anymore after wearing glasses for 60 years? And he says, "I hate it." I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "If I'm standing outside and looking around."
Right.
He says, "If I'm standing outside and I'm looking around, it's great. It's perfect. I love it." He says, but he's been wearing those transition lenses, the sun sensor lenses that when you walk outside, they automatically darken since they came out in the late 60s. He says, "I still need reading glasses, and they told me I would. I don't need regular glasses." He says, "So I went from having one pair of glasses that I wore all the time for everything." He says, "Now I got a pair of glasses for reading and I got a pair of sunglasses."
Oh,
He says, "I hate it. So now I got 2 pairs of glasses to keep up after."
But still, the fact that they fixed that stigmatism.
Yeah. And he could see perfectly after that.
That's crazy. So, wow. So let me throw this at you.
Okay.
So glasses, when were they invented? Seeing glasses. Well, it says here 13th century, believe it or not. There are many dilemmas about invention of glasses. According to some sources, the invention of the first wearable pair of eyeglasses occurred in the 13th century in Italy. Salvino di Armate probably invented glasses in around 1285, though various sources suggest an earlier origin.
Wow.
That's insane.
I didn't know they were that old. But let's think about that. You're talking about 1285, right?
That's what they're throwing at us here.
Okay. Benjamin Franklin invented bifocals
in 17 or 16 or
in the 1700s. So 500 years went by from the invention of the glasses to the invention of bifocals. Nobody thought to put 2 lenses together for close stuff and far away stuff.
That's crazy.
For 500 years.
So glasses were around for that long. I didn't know that. I thought that people, I mean, we're talking throughout the Middle Ages, glasses. I don't know that they were widely
No, they weren't widely available. They were for rich people only, man. Rich
Yeah.
people only. Well, you got to figure the average person back then couldn't read anyway. So what the hell do they have to see?
Well, I mean, well, what if they
So
had to read the labels in the on the cans to make sure that the date was
there were no cans.
That's right.
I mean, the only people that knew how to read or write were the priests and the bishops, and then not all priests,
And
but
royalty
yeah,
sometimes.
some royalty, monks, abbots, and priests and bishops were about the only ones, the educators, you know.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until the big Reformation, when Henry VIII split from the Catholic Church, that reading and writing became more and more and more important for the populace at large.
Yeah.
That you know, people who weren't associated with people who weren't clergy started being educators. So
Yeah. That once idea of educating the population
mhm.
was a big deal
Yeah,
because it benefits everyone.
yeah,
It gets the domestic product up of a nation because you have more talent. You can
yeah.
tax them more,
Mhm.
which
Well,
is not a great thing, but
well, not only that, but people who were educators, you know, heck, doctors, lawyers, engineers, artists, they could be productive in their career for a lot longer because they could see better. You
mhm,
know, so you had doctors practicing well into their 60s, where before they would retire in their 40s because they just couldn't see to operate.
yeah.
And the same with lawyers; they couldn't read legal briefs. You know,
That's my spleen. Oops,
yeah, that's it.
sorry.
Yeah, I just came in here because my finger hurts. You know,
Doc, what are you doing? What are you doing all up in there? Oops, sorry. I thought this was your. I said open up and say, oh, I didn't mean to
yeah,
go the other route.
but
Orange Juice says Angelo Barvorier invented Cristallio, clear, colorless glass from the interwebs.
uh-huh.
Hmm. Now that's a mouthful.
So how did they invent glasses before there was clear, colorless glass? Because if clear, colorless glass didn't come along till 1500, how could that guy invent reading glasses in 1285?
I
Unless
don't.
everybody was looking through broken Chianti bottles or something. I don't know.
Well, the actual process of creating glass wasn't that a big deal back in the Middle Ages?
It was later on. It was later than the Middle Ages. It
When
was,
actual glass was because I don't know that those. Well, no, wait a second. In the later middle, you know what? We don't. Let me find out right now because that's what. Unless Harju gets to it first.
well, I do know that there are several civilizations that never really tried to get glass, like Chinese, the Chinese culture,
Are you ready
the
for
Chinese
this?
civilization. They never really turned to glass until way, way, way later, way after Europe did.
Oh, check this out. Answer to the window, the actual glass window, 7th 17th century. In England, glass became common in the windows of ordinary homes only in the early 17th century, whereas windows made up of panes of flattened animal horn. What? Animal horn?
Yeah,
Animal horn or animal? It looks like horn. Home? Is it home or home?
horn, horn.
Animal horn were used as early as the 14th century. So I guess they used to close the windows with like wooden whatnots.
Yeah, and there was nothing there. But I mean, in China and Japan, up into the 17 and 1800s, they didn't think glass was really all that worthwhile. I mean, they got to a certain point. I mean, they invented China basically, which is why we call it that. They got up to the point to where they had cups, and that was good enough for them. But they didn't have mirrors, you know. They didn't develop um, telescopes. They didn't develop microscopes or any of that kind of thing. But then Galileo basically invented the telescope in the well, that was in the 1400s. So lens technology was at least developing by then. So, yeah, I don't know.
Charles just joined the what's going on, Charles Deering. The topic is, well, multiple things, but at this point we've ended up for some reason on the topic of when the heck did actual windows actually start having you know glass in them. And we found that that's the 17th century, although I think Harju has been feeding us some crazy facts down the line. So
Well, he is right about 1745 Glass Excise Act,
okay.
where they taxed people based on the number of windows you had in your house.
Well, that what who'd be
And
busting out window
they
pane?
did. They bricked them up.
Oh
they
yeah,
they pulled out their windows and bricked them up,
yep,
you know.
yep. I'm with you. I'm totally pro. Stop
Yeah.
that digging in my wallet.
That's it. Candles were cheaper than the tax was. And you can still see buildings if you as you walk around in London especially, where you see bricked up windows. They just never bothered to reopen them and put a window back in.
Oh, dude, talking about windows and this and that. I don't know if it's with you that I talked about it, but there's an actual article somewhere out there in the internet, and it was the most incredible thing. It happens to be that in London there's a street with a house. You know how they butt those like 3, 4, or 5 story home buildings and stuff down in London.
Yeah,
Well,
right up together. Yeah.
well, they were building the underground that was going to run through one of these,
Mhm.
and they needed between two houses, but they didn't want their property values to go. I don't know what the story, but they decided on building that underground right through that area, and it was going to look like an ugly gap. They built a facade
Mhm.
house that actually has a number on the
Yeah.
door. It has windows, it has everything, but it's totally fake. There's nothing behind that door.
Right.
You can't open it, and yet it looks like passing by as
Mhm.
another home right
Yep.
there in London. Amazing.
Yep. I saw that video a few months back as well. The street right in front of that building, and it's both sides of the street. The street right in front of that building is actually a bridge over the railroad.
It's crazy.
And so you've got, it just looks like you're walking down the street, and you can walk up, there's steps up to the front porch,
Mhm.
but it's concrete. I mean, everything is just a concrete slab decorated up to look like
To look like.
it's all decorated up to look like a house. It's got architectural elements added to it and everything, but the rest of it is painted on.
Do you
And
like how
it's
I do you like how I fill in the blanks when the video the audio the thing
when I
stops?
freeze up,
Yeah.
yeah. And I've also started noticing I'm over here on StreamYard. I'm not watching on the YouTube page.
Yeah.
I'm over here on StreamYard and I'm watching. And when I see it do that, I stop. And then when it picks up, I start over again. So when we do the edit, we don't have to cut all that out. Like we're going to cut all this out right here.
You were very surgical with the edit the past that and I see because you do not like those errors, whereas I would be more prone to it's the natural course of things, but the correct thing would be to snip those out.
Mhm.
Yeah, just a point that I wanted to make.
Yeah, but that's why this episode that was released today, as we record this, it's September 17th. The episode that went live September 17th, episode 57, as a matter
Yeah.
of fact, it's only 40 minutes long because I had so many freeze ups when we recorded it that I just eliminated that whole passage. So,
Yeah, I always chalk it up to it's part of the flow of thing. You know, um how could I say? It's just those little glitches and this and that. I've never really much bothered, but it is you in the glitch, so I'll take care of
well,
that.
well, no,
If
it's
I
not.
had it.
It's not that it's me. I would be doing the same thing if it was you. So,
See, but I'm one for like, okay, there was a little issue there. Let's keep rolling. Whatever.
yeah, yeah. But if it cheesed me off because we were making some pretty good points and we were having a good fun discussion, and all of a sudden my connection with StreamYard for some reason went,
Dude, we
and
gotta
it's just
figure
like,
out what it
oh man. I'm working on it from my end, but I can't figure it out. I really can't figure it out.
It's like, I mean, it is true. Let's be fair, because I think we've talked about this way back in the past. But I think you mentioned one time a long time ago something to the effect of, you know, with technology, you see people now like banging on their phones, like, "Come on, load the page." And I think you said something to the effect of like, people have to remember what they had before and what they have now. Just give the technology a moment to,
Yeah.
to
That's all we can do, and it's the same with this. I mean, if they may not ever find a fix for it, I may never find a fix for it. So I'll just back up and start over again as soon as I become unfrozen.
But in all seriousness, there should be a rational sort of like workaround solution that will occur sometime in the near future. I would think, because it's just
Here's hoping.
yeah.
Here's hoping, because I'm tired of it. But I can either laugh about it or cry about it, and I just don't have the tears to spare. So
Man, I had a sort of like secondary lineup of sort of the little questions that I throw at you every now and then, but with this discussion, I've completely, and it was an interesting one, but with this discussion, it's totally. Oh, I remember now. I remember. I love when that happens. This is totally random. You tell me if you want to drop it or not.
go
But
for it.
so we have 50 states. Oh no, we have 53 states. And you know how they always ask, like Jay Leno would do
Right.
a man on the street, and they ask people, how many states are there in the United States? And people would say, 49, 51. And like, you get all sorts of numbers, dude. And it's like, it's 50.
Mhm.
It's 50, and but yet people are like, no, 53, 50. So my whole question to you is, this is what I'd like to try. I'm going to throw out, it has nothing to do with that thing. I want to throw out a state, and I want you to tell me the first thing that comes to your mind that represents that state.
Okay, but let me just throw in real quick before you do that. There are only 46 states.
Oh, well,
There
goodness.
are 46 states and 4 commonwealths.
What?
Yes.
What's a commonwealth? I mean, I know what the common. No, hold on. Before I know you're gonna. What state is a? There's not.
Yes. You have the Commonwealth of Kentucky, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, and Virginia.
What?
They're commonwealths. They're not states.
What?
Yeah.
We need to go to war. But
well, now that I just derailed your train of thought again, you were saying, I'm sorry.
well, in all fairness, if that is, and I have no reason to. Well, I do have reason to like say, well, wait a second. But if that's the case, and we wanted to, and they're officially chartered under like commonwealths,
They're commonwealths, yeah.
which is a pretty shock. I did not know that. If that's the case, then all these people that Jay Leno was asking on the street might have had a point to stop and say, what? Well, maybe there's this and that. But I don't think so. I think they didn't know, because the common consensus is say how many states? 50 states.
Well, actually, in layman's terms, yeah, there are 50 states.
Yeah.
And the difference between a state and the commonwealth is in name only. They still have the same, houses of Congress, the state assembly and the state senate and such like that. But they're run the same. They're looked at exactly the same. It's just it's one of those things, no, we're not a state, we're a commonwealth. It's like, no, I don't have a car. This is personal transportation.
So it's like a hoity-toity.
Exactly. It's in name only.
Because I've heard them say the great state of Kentucky.
Right. But if you look at their state seal, it's the Commonwealth of Kentucky.
Well, geez. Well, you know what? That's something that I'd never even considered at all. So you threw me, one from left field.
I just had to, when you set yourself up on something like that, I have to. Because I may never get to use that again.
Yeah, well, it's such how many of you guys out there honestly knew that difference? And don't hindsight is so don't, I knew it. No, honestly, did you know the Commonwealth situation? Because to me it was the state of Kentucky.
Yeah.
What was the other one? Illinois?
No, there's Kentucky, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Maryland.
What is wrong with those people?
Hey, they were
Anything
they were some of the first 13. Well, not Kentucky, but
anything to be different, you know?
Yeah,
Psh,
exactly.
They're going after every little trend, back in the day.
Yeah, says the Florida man. Okay, so go ahead. I'm sorry. I just had to throw that in there.
Okay, so I'm going to throw a state at you, and whatever thing that in your mind is attached to that, you can say, in a relatively,
Yeah, sure.
So Texas.
Barbecue. That's the first thing that pops into my brain. Barbecue, because beef.
Okay. Maine.
Lobster. It's a lot of this is going to be food related, I'm telling you.
Mississippi.
Riverboat.
Oh. Okay. Yeah. Let's throw this spin on it. Louisiana, right next door.
Cajun.
Okay.
Cajun food. That's where I'm going with that. I guarantee.
Idaho.
Potato.
I knew it.
You knew it. Have you ever been to Idaho?
I've not.
Potato.
Arizona.
Don't think of it. Mark Lindsay.
Mark Lindsay?
Yeah, the singer. That was one of his hit songs, Arizona.
Oh,
I was
wow.
going to say, don't do it, but I couldn't. It was the first thing that popped into my brain.
New York.
Oh, man. Wow, why is that so hard? New York. Nothing popped into my head. Albany is the only thing that comes to mind. Okay. And that's the capital, but, that's kind of boring.
Yeah. You could have said Big Apple or...
Yeah, I probably could have, but, and the sad part of this is I just put more thought into New York than I have in the last 2 years. So, yeah, I don't know if that's good or bad. Oregon, trees.
Oh.
Yeah, that's about all I can think of.
Colorado.
The Rocky Mountains.
Okay.
The Rocky Mountains.
All right. Well, there you go.
Okay. Well, it's not all falling down laughter or nothing like that. It's just, quick association. I thought that's what you were going for. Anyway.
That's exactly what I was. I just wanted to see the associate. Montana.
Empty. Empty. I got some friends in Wyoming, and they have relatives in Montana. And they say, and I've said this joke before, in Montana, cops will pull you over just because they're lonely. Where are you going? Take me with you.
Well, the other night we talked about this, Mark, and if you remember, we talked about. I asked you the question, or all you guys, I asked the question of, what is the most economical, tax-friendly, for a family and all that, state in the union. And up on the list was Wyoming. Mm-hmm. Of course, you had Alaska because they actually pay.
Yeah, they not only don't have an income tax in Alaska, but they get a check from the state government every year.
I mean, come on,
royalties on the pipeline and the oil on the North Slope.
So. I'm telling you, that's like we need royalties from. Like our oranges and Cuban sandwiches over here.
We don't export anything but people from Oregon. So,
well, they have plenty of land, it appears, and they're quite but they're very like sparse, the
Yeah,
population.
because it's colder than the well digger's belt buckle and windy most of the time.
But the imagery
So,
from that place was beautiful.
oh, it's gorgeous country.
It
Don't
has
get
to
me
be
wrong.
just.
It's gorgeous. Montana and Wyoming both are just absolutely beautiful country. Um, did you ever see that movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind?
Yeah, well, back in the day, but yeah.
Yeah, Devil's Tower is where that was shot in
Yeah.
Wyoming. I mean, it's spectacular country out there, but there's nobody there because it's cold. It's cold and windy.
Is it any colder than, say, North Dakota?
There ain't nobody in North Dakota either. So, but well, actually, there are more people in North Dakota than there are in Montana. But it's that it's that transition from the mountains to the prairie there,
Mm-hmm.
and the wind just comes whipping down out of those mountains, and I mean, it'll take you away if you're not careful.
Really?
Yeah, it's pretty brutal up in that neck of the woods. I mean, you can ask Snow Crusher about the wind out there on the prairies in the middle of winter.
The coldest I've ever in a place that I've ever been was really even not even New York when I went up to New York, although it was cold. The coldest was Chicago. It was so cold.
Chicago's pretty brutal too.
It was super freaking. It was unbelievably cold, dude.
Yeah, it can. Chicago can be pretty brutal too. Thankfully, we live down in a valley where it's not too awful bad. I have friends still down in Nevada. They're already getting snow, and because they're at such a high altitude, people think, oh my God, the Nevada desert, it snows there. Yeah, they're sitting at 5,000 feet. It snows.
Hmm.
You know, so it gets stinking cold there.
Wow, dude. Well, I'll tell you what. Today I did the lawn outside and this and that, and it was sure hot, and it's hot on a constant basis. Now, within the next month or so, we're gonna start to sort of like taper off into a more comfortable, yet still what anybody in their right mind would consider not comfortable weather, but it'll be comfortable for us. And then we're gonna get into some months where we get a week, a few days, and then sometimes a week of cold weather. Mind you, cold meaning for us, it's such a shift that we're actually pleasantly, happy of in the 60s, somewhere within the 60s window. But it lasts such a short time,
Yeah,
and that's our cycle.
It's already doing that with us. I turned the heat on today. We were running air conditioning yesterday. Turned on the heat today.
Wow, dude. Well, that's a good thing. You know what? I don't know, man. It's nice to have seasonal changes as opposed to the suffering.
Yeah.
And
boredom as well, because I mean, we were stationed in Hawaii, and like I say, average
temperature.
As I say, average temperature in the summer was 85, and average temperature in the winter was 82. And, storms came in, it rained a little bit, then they'd blow out, and that was it. But it was always the same thing. There were no seasons. It was, we moved into a house. My wife planted bell pepper plants. When we moved out of that house 3 years later, she pulled them up. The same plants. They didn't die off over the winter.
Yeah.
They just kept going,
Well, so here's the thing with us. I cut the grass right now. Within 1 week, it's going to be tall, busting out, and our trees and branches. It's insane. It's like everything is growing at incredible speed rates. It's just constant.
Yep.
And that's how it is here. It's just constant growing. The vegetation is busting through.
That's the way it was in Hawaii too. Just once a week, mow the lawn. That was it. But
yeah, insane. So, we do have a website.
We do.
Oh, yeah. It's called Trampled Underfoot Podcast.com. And on that website, you can see all sorts of cool stuff like past episodes. We have a button that says what is it called? It's called the Wayback Machine.
The Wayback Machine.
Yeah, you click that and you can see some awesome episodes, listen to some awesome episodes. And actually, my favorite episode of all of them, although there's lots of them, is the one that's called, what's that called, Mark?
Episode 11, The Atom Smasher.
The Atom Smasher. Yeah,
It was
I enjoy that.
last Halloween. I'm going to have to come up with another Halloween story for this year.
That was my favorite because the way it came together and the way you told the story and what it meant. Um, that a young boy is learning, the world around him. He finds something strange, like a sound, and he doesn't know what it is, and he figures to attach it to something he heard on TV, and so on and so forth. And it's just a great story. It's a great episode, and we are coming up on Halloween, and it's a good one to listen to on Halloween. I look at it like it's like the Pumpkin Patch Halloween Charlie Brown thing.
It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown.
Yeah, that's how I see that episode.
Okay, well, it's there. It's there. Good grief. Every episode is there, all the way back to episode 1 when we were both young and spry and didn't need glasses.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. So that's trampledunderfootpodcast.com. Also, those of you over here in the live chat, you already know we have a YouTube page, but those of you listening on the podcast, come check us out on YouTube, trampledunderfootpodcast.com. We record these episodes live every Tuesday evening, 6:30 Pacific, 9:30 Eastern. So come on over here to YouTube, join us, hoot and holler in the live chat, like Mr. Billy Burt and Hobby's Woodshop is doing right now.
So over on Facebook, if you want to drop us a couple of hints on what you'd like to hear us talk about and get our thoughts on, feel free to go over to the Facebook page, which is Trampled Underfoot Podcast on Facebook, and drop us a message. Let us know how we're doing. And I think that we're good.
Yep, I think we're good. So thank you everybody for hanging out with us. Y'all have a good evening. See you next week.